The Home Office is launching a fresh wave of immigration raids for illegal working and boasting of record numbers of deportations as Labour attempts to counter the growing political threat from Reform UK. Ahead of the second reading of the new border security bill today, officials announced that both illegal working visits and arrests since Labour came to power had soared by about 38% compared with the previous 12 months. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is expected to join an early morning raid this week targeting illegal working, while the government will broadcast footage of deportations, a number of them involving foreign criminals, from detention to removal centres and onto waiting planes. Cooper commented, "The immigration rules must be respected and enforced. For far too long, employers have been able to take on and exploit illegal migrants, and too many people have been able to arrive and work illegally with no enforcement action ever taken," she said. Not only does this create a dangerous draw for people to risk their lives by crossing the channel in a small boat, but it results in the abuse of vulnerable people, the immigration system, and our economy. Downing Street is planning to go beyond simply taking the fight to reform. "We don't think it's enough just to look strong on migration. We actually need to be strong. We've done really well on returns, but people say they don't believe it, that if it was true, they'd see it on the news," a source said. Reform UK now boasts over 200,000 members. Reform UK came top of a YouGov poll for the first time last week. The Labour government believes looking tough on migration could help retain Labour voters tempted by Nigel Farage's party. A Labour spokesperson said more than 16,400 failed asylum seekers, irregular immigrants and foreign criminals have been deported since the election, although more than half left the country voluntarily, with no mention of this since Labour's election win. It's not difficult to see why the electorate is sceptical about Labour claims. However, the recent approach is fueling disquiet on the Labour benches, with concerns the government could return to the hostile environment for irregular migrants. The Farage effect is the reason why Keir Starmer is panicking. The government's renewed crackdown on those working in the UK without the legal right to do so has resulted in the biggest January for enforcement activity in more than 5 years, officials said. Some sources played down a direct link to the threat of reform, arguing the fresh push instead showed they were delivering on an election promise to remove more people who have no legal status in the UK. Since Starmer scrapped the Rwanda scheme, there remains little deterrent to slow the numbers of illegal entrants. The UK is seen as a soft touch by many so-called asylum seekers who arrive illegally. Reform came second in 98 seats, of which 89 were won by Labour at the last election, and there is concern among some Labour MPs, particularly across the so-called Red Wall and in the south, that Nigel Farage's party could take dozens more next time unless the government gets a grip on the issue. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, announced her first fully-fledged migration policy last week, pledging to double the length of time new arrivals have to be in the UK before they can apply for indefinite leave, another possible knee-jerk reaction to polls that suggest Reform UK are on course to deliver a crushing defeat to both the mainstream parties. Mainstream media news articles describe the UK's current government efforts to combat illegal immigration, working under the leadership of Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, ramping up immigration raids and deportations, claiming a significant rise in enforcement activities, such as workplace visits and arrests. The government highlights the need to uphold immigration laws and tackle illegal working, with a focus on large employers in upcoming raids. This crackdown has also sparked some political tensions, particularly within the Labour Party. Some Labour members, like Diane Abbott, have expressed concerns that mimicking Reform UK's tougher stance on immigration could alienate the party's core supporters. Meanwhile, Labour is trying to balance its position to counter the political threat from Reform UK, a party now drawing significant support. Government officials link illegal work to dangerous boat crossings, but there's little concrete evidence that most of these migrants are being trafficked for labour purposes, with more funding handed to the French government. The Labour Party's attempt to mirror some of the rhetoric used by Reform UK led to people taking to social media, stating Starmer is clearly taking the electorate for fools. No one can trust anything Labour says or does anymore. Since the broken promises of their election manifesto, Labour's credibility has been completely undermined. The party seems more focused on copying the rhetoric of Reform UK to try to shore up support, rather than sticking to any genuine principles or delivering on promises. It's clear that Labour is willing to say anything to win votes, but their actions show they can't be trusted to follow through.